I'd like to go ahead and begin with the Wednesday, April 27th regular meeting for the Public Works Committee. First, on the agenda here, I believe we should also approve the prior minutes. No? Yeah. So we have these, the minutes in here from previous time we were here. Do I have anybody who wants to approve that or to accept that?
Move to approve the minutes from February 23rd meeting.
Do you have a second? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, so next one is, we're going to get on to the open forum then. And I'd like to welcome everybody who's here today. Thank you for coming. And this is a time for, if there's anybody that wants to bring something up that's not on the agenda at this point. Anything else on the agenda, you will have an opportunity to speak on that as well. So if there's anything that's not on the agenda that you'd like to speak about, this is time to come up. Okay, so we don't have anybody at this time that I see. So I'd like to then close open forum. And then we'll head on to the recycling public hearing. So that is the second one on here. I guess, did you want to say anything about that, Tom, before we begin, or no?
Really what we're here to decide is, is the proposed site acceptable? That's the first thing that we want to look at. And then the second thing we want to look at is there's an engineering proposal in here. If you believe that the site should continue, we would need to move to final engineering to build, or another option would be to seek an RFP to do a design build of the site.
Okay.
So those are the three things we'd like to try to accomplish tonight. Should we make that recommendation to the city council, then the next thing that would happen here would probably be recommendations from the staff for options to fund the building of the site and operation of it. And that would occur at a later meeting.
Okay, so hearing that, I'd like to open that up to anybody who wants to say anything about this, and if possible, since we have a fair number of people, we want to get done as, not quickly, but we'd like to have it at a reasonable time. So if you could just limit it to around 5 minutes, I'd appreciate that. But would anyone like to speak about this right now? Please state your name and your address, and thank you.
Yes, good evening to the commission. My name is Paula West.
Oops, not on. All right, thank you. My name is Paula West. I live at 24839 Cove Trail, which is right along Lower Roy Lake Road. And I emailed the committee my concerns, and I hope you've had a chance to read those, or at least will read those. And just for the sake of public record, I wanted to briefly reiterate a couple of the points that I have already sent to the committee. Number one being, the people of Nisswa have strongly said they support continued recycling here. However, supporting it and where the location of that recycling center is two different issues. I am extremely concerned about the safety on Lower Roy Lake Road and Hazelwood Road. I live along that road. I see what happens on there day to day. There is a tremendous amount of traffic in the summertime. Heavy bicycle and pedestrian traffic is a danger to anyone on that road. And even though the Gull Lake Trail is going to be constructed along that road in 2023, that will eliminate a little bit of that problem. Bicyclists and pedestrians are still going to have to cross major intersections along that road. And, I almost killed two little girls last summer because of the poor sight lines all along Lower Roy Lake Road and because they were riding on the wrong side of the street. There is heavy construction and truck traffic along that road. And We also have high speed. I've nearly been broadsided 4 or 5 times trying to turn into my street because the traffic is too speeds along and it is not monitored very well by the city on that street. And now we have golf carts that are also allowed, and I think you will see from the resort that there will be more golf cart traffic along that road in the summer. So I'm very much concerned about the traffic along that road. Since the traffic light on Colonel Thorpe Drive has been installed, the traffic on Hazelwood Drive is just tremendous, and those houses along that road are right on the road. So any increased traffic to get to this new recycling center is going to cause some major safety concerns along these 2 roads, which happen to be the feeder roads to the new recycling center, proposed recycling center, and also are 2 of the busiest residential streets in the city of Nisswa. Secondly, I do know that the increased amount of recycling here in Nisswa has created concerns for the city, and that it is necessary for the city to look at either expanding recycling, relocating it, reconfiguring it in some way. But I don't think that the city has looked at all the options. You own 5 acres of land, and I'm very surprised to see this plan presented here this evening. 2 days ago, this was drawn up. This plan says that there is 1.2 acres of land within that 5 acres that's reserved for a pickleball court. I'm the chairman of the Nisswa Parks and Rec Commission, and as of 3 weeks ago, this decision had not been made by the Parks Commission, so I'm not sure what this is all about. I have not been told about this by the Park and Rec Director or the city administrator. So this 5 acres could possibly, I'm not saying it's the ideal location, but it could possibly be used to reconfigure and relocate the recycling there, because the user-friendly downtown location is very appreciated by the residents, and they appreciate the downtown location. So I'm asking you to step back and take a look at if there's any way you can reconfigure your plans to put just the household recycling within this area. Now, the Park Commission is embarking on a master plan development. We have put out RFPs for that process. And so we are looking at planning, and it's likely that this property will be looked at as part of the Parks and Rec master plan. But again, where did this 1.2 acres come from? We've talked at the Park Commission about wanting to have pickleball courts. I want pickleball courts. I'm a pickleball player, but we have never designated a certain amount of land for this purpose. We're hoping that there will be, but to my knowledge, this is not, unless the city has made this arbitrary decision without consulting the commission, that this is not in the plans in the future. And right now, the park is not using anything, well, you can see from the map that a portion of the park does encroach upon those 5 acres. So I basically just want to ask the commission this evening to step back, make sure that you've looked at all the options before you proceed with asking the city council for more money to do the final engineering work on this proposed recycling center. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, is there someone else who would like to? Yes, please.
My name's Greg Voigt. I live 25161 Stumville. So I'm quite close to where this proposed recycling center would be. And not to rehash the previous speaker's points, because she had some very great points there. I travel that lower Roy Lake Road at least once, sometimes twice a day, going to work, coming home, going to the store. In the summertime, and I'm not denigrating any of our fine visitors that come up to our area, but they already think that Lower Roy Lake Road is a 2-lane bicycle path.
Mhm.
That, and with the new homes being built in the Grandview addition on the west side of Lower Roy Lake Road, we will have more residential traffic on that road. So again, previous speaker had some great points. My point is the bicycle traffic and the pedestrian traffic on that road, summertime especially, and that makes sense, dictates that could be very dangerous for people. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, please.
My name is Jim Swanson. I live at 5,000 Lower Roy Lake Road. And I don't have any new points to bring up. Paula and the other gentleman did a great job. But I would just ask why it can't stay in its recycling center, stay where it is now. It's in a downtown area where there are the roads, the main roads, Main Street, Nisswa feeds right into that. And it just doesn't seem, it may have to be expanded a little bit. It just doesn't seem appropriate where it's so convenient for everybody and in a busy area now to put a recycling center in a residential area, which basically is what it is along Lower Roy Lake Road. So that is my main point. I think you should, as Paula said, take a step back and look at this a little closer and not make a recycling center 2 to 3 miles from where it is now.
Mhm.
It just doesn't seem right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Getting old, legs don't work quite like they should. I'm Bill Meyer, 6054 Shady Acres Court. 3 years resident of the city. I was involved in the city planning years ago. I was a city engineer for a number of years. And thinking in terms of the overall usage of the community, it just seems like there's going to be a lot of traffic involved, and it's going to increase, I think, with increased recycling. That traffic, I know when we've used the facility currently, there's oftentimes 2 or 3 cars in there. So, you know, we're talking about over a long period of time, a lot of extra traffic count going in some direction. I think from that standpoint, adding more traffic, as has been mentioned, to the Lower Roy Lake Road, especially with all the residential that's out there, is not the most logical way to go. But adding that traffic, it's going to increase, adding that traffic to the downtown area where you've got commercial businesses that can take advantage of people making 2 or 3 stops as they come into town. Go to the recycling, stop at the hardware store, stop and get gas, all in one location. I think that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
My name's Greg Newmeyer and we're at 25178 Nisswa Lake Lane. And I really want to emphasize what he's talked about. You know, the last one talked about traffic counts. I would think the city would need to do some kind of a traffic count study because both Hazelwood and Lower Roy Lake Road are barely wide enough for 2 cars. And if you add traffic, you know, the first lady said she's had incidents on that road and the other issue in the summertime on Lower Roy Lake Road is the sun. You know, it runs straight east and west and you just can't see people. And I do think that if this is done, there's going to be some serious accidents along there. And you know, if that road was improved, because that's the thing now, that road's just a narrow blacktop road. If you improve it and make it wider and put curb and gutter on it, then this might make sense. But until that's done, I don't think that the city could add that traffic on those roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Public Works Committee. I'm Roger Landers. I live on Edna Lake Road. Have been there for over 40 years and really appreciate the city of Nisswa stay within the recycling center business. We know that there have been other sites within Crow Wing County that have decided not to be involved with it. So I do appreciate the city officials wanting to continue this program because it is very popular and very useful to the city. And why is that? I believe, and like the other people before me have said, it's because of the location. And if we move it to a remote location, I really think that recycling could possibly decrease, and that would be a bad deal. Our city administrator, Jenny, has indicated that 45% of the recycling in Crow Wing County collection is done right here. 45% of recycling. Let me say it again, 45% of the recycling is collected right here in the little city of Nisswa, Minnesota. Now, why is that? I believe one of the reasons is because of the location of our recycling center. And I hope that you do reevaluate your current proposal to move it to a remote location. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please.
My name is Randy Stumble. I live on 4416 Lower Roy Lake Road. I'm right on the straightaway, so. And I think the one thing that we're kind of forgetting is when you move it over to by the sewer ponds, where's it gonna be? Are you gonna have a gate? Are you gonna have, what time of day is it gonna be open? How are you gonna manage that? If the gate is closed, they'll leave it by the gate. So I think you got to look at that too. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Russ Yankee. I live on 4419 Lower Roy Lake Road, right next to the sewer pond. All right. What is wrong with where it is right now? You know, seems to work, right? 45% of the recycling takes place in Nisswa or for Crow Wing County right here, works good. Why do you want to move all that traffic out to our quiet little Lower Roy Lake Road where soon to come bike path, you know, you're just trying to cram everything out of town, out in our direction. You know, my mother-in-law had the whole 57 acres there. Backs up to Grandview. I'm sure each one of you, you know, where do you live? Where do you live? Do you want it in your neighborhood? Do you want that added traffic into your neighborhood? What happens if the gate's closed? People are gonna just stack stuff outside the gate? I already pick up bags of garbage every summer from people just throwing it out their windows, driving down Lower Roy Lake Road. We have 5 horses, quiet neighborhood, Stumbolds, all of us. It's peaceful. It's a nice neighborhood. Now you want to bring not only the trail, you want to bring garbage into the neighborhood. Really? That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
My name's Jeff Warren. I live at 24729 Cove Trail. Unlike everybody that's here, including whoever's sitting here, I'm a newcomer here. I haven't been here for 40 years or whatever the case is. I built a new home here because I wanted to get into a nice, quiet little environment. And I've lived in this area for on and off for almost 60 years. But I was not out in Nisswa. And yet I'm old enough to where I can remember people that used to come here, and basically this area has existed off of tourism since day one. I mean, it's existed off of this. So what I'm driving at is that in the past, in years past, if you make things inconvenient for people, you're liable to go back somewhat to the days of everybody throwing their stuff in the woods or leaving it outside like someone's talking about the gate that you're going to put in or whatever. And the tougher you make this thing for people, the more likely we're going to have people that come up here on weekends, or even weekend people that don't have a garbage service. They're not going to load this stuff up in their car and take it back to Minneapolis or take it back to Ohio or take it back to Nebraska or wherever they're from. They're going to find a place for it. If it's inconvenient, it's going to be a problem. Since I live so close to the Lower Roy Lake Road and used it during COVID, which is maybe a bad example because nobody could go anywhere, but they were all walking, riding bikes and doing whatever they were doing. At that particular point in time, businesses that have been here and new businesses that have come into that area create a tremendous amount of truck traffic. Mr. Stumvold has a very going operation there with big excavators, dump trucks and everything else using that road all day long, and perfectly has a right to be there because he's been there forever. Copper Creek has got 8 or 9 trucks that are using that road to run up and down and go to the backside of Gull Lake or work for Grandview Lodge. Grandview Lodge trucks are running back and forth up that deal to come into town. In addition to the pedestrian traffic that lives there that's supposed to be able to walk somewhere, or the bike people that are being rented bikes at Grandview Lodge to run all over the place, or golf carts that they may be rented in the future to run up and down that road. Without that trail there or any way to widen that road and a hilly road besides, it's so unsafe, I won't use it now. I'm old enough to where I don't want to get run over. So I guess that's my point. It's too much traffic there.
Okay. Please, anybody else? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Lisa Johnson. I live at 4419 Lower Roy Lake Road. I've been coming up here since I was a baby, and we've always loved our summers up here that we got to spend when we had our riding stables, and, you know, we have a lot of fond memories. We understand, you know, like the growth with Grandview Lodge, you know, more traffic and people coming. We get the traffic that for the shortcut to Zorba's from Nisswa. The city, you know, for the sewer ponds and everything that the growth that's been going on there, you know, I mean, that's general traffic for business going on in Nisswa. I am opposed to recycling coming out there on top of the rest of the city works. You know, and I agree with location, location, location. We're gonna have people flying up and down that road. I've got grandkids that come and visit. I don't want them getting hit by cars. We just, 6 years ago, we started building a $280,000 house on our property. And now I'm looking at having to move and sell my piece of property because alls I'm gonna see is a bike trail coming in there on top of now a proposed recycling plant that is, it seems to have been working just fine behind the fire station for all of these years. You know, where do we get any relief from all of the traffic that the city of Nisswa wants to grow? You know, where's the quaint Lower Roy Lake Road, or where's the quaint little town feel that I moved over here from a 300-acre farm to be in the lakes area. And I'm a productive individual, but I want my life to be quiet in my house. You know, I don't need people driving. They already speed down Lower Roy Lake Road. You know, and I see the police are there and they, you know, kind of patrol or whatever when they can. And now it's going to be, have you guys done like, I mean, how many people recycle? Is there a study on that for what the traffic is behind the fire station every day? How many hours a day? What are we looking at here? Is there a study?
No. We know how many tons come and go, but we don't.
Roughly, what is that?
How many tons of recycled material are
Yeah,
processed out of there?
roughly, what is that? I mean,
I don't have that report in front of me to tell you, but it's significant.
plenty, yes. So just the traffic alone, are you gonna expand and widen Lower Roy Lake Road to accommodate people walking and, you know, before the trails put in? When are they proposing to put this, to move it?
There is no exact date yet. It'll probably be within the next year or two.
Is there somewhere online that I can get more information on this? I don't believe that I've gotten anything in the mail. I just found out like 10 minutes ago that this meeting was going on here tonight.
If you want any of the information for this or anything else regarding the city, just check our website.
Okay. It's all on there for the
Should be all on there.
proposals and
And you can always call or stop by too.
time, and do you have the whole?
We also have a Facebook page.
Pardon me?
We also have a Facebook page.
Okay. Is it, do you guys have like the whole proposal of where it's gonna be placed and how people are gonna enter and leave and?
There's a map on the
Open
wall there if you want to
hours.
look at it. Right behind there that shows the concept drawing for it.
Okay, and that's also on your website?
It is. If it's not, if you want a better copy of it, feel free to call and shoot me an email and I'll get it to you.
Okay. All right, I guess, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, not seeing anybody else. What I'd like to do is to shift then to on the board here, you know, the
Questions, comments?
comments that we may have right now. Bill, would you like to begin or no? Do you have any, do you want to say anything about this or?
Well, I just wonder if people in the audience are familiar with the
Mhm.
Is this public knowledge?
It should be. We've discussed this. We discussed this at a previous meeting I believe it was last June, when we first looked at the concept drawing, if you recall. I had given a list of pros and cons for it at that time.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed the cons, but what are the cons to having it right where it is now?
So one of the cons is the fire chief would like to see it moved. That's the first one. The second one is it needs to be expanded, and there's not a lot of room for good expansion there. Third, it needs to be completely fenced in. That's a requirement. We have to abide by that. So even in its existing location, we would have to change it from what it is.
Where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah.
West of town.
West of town?
Mhm.
There's no area out there you can't fence in?
It's not in Nisswa.
Oh, really? How about you? Where do you live?
I live down on the south end of town.
South
The,
end
the
of town?
point, the biggest point is
No.
the fire department.
I have the biggest point. I live right next to the sewer pond. You know what? I've got 8,700 square feet that the city of Nisswa was supposed to buy for a trail this year that got put off till next year because of some confusion. I got a lot of issues with all of this. And now you want to shove the recycling out there too. Why?
Because
Where
of
do
the
you-
fire.
I don't know
department.
what
Sir,
happened. You got no room.
First,
Where do you live?
I live in Nisswa myself too. But I think we're not here for a debate like this to
Really?
what you're debating, where do we live? What do we
Yeah.
do? That type of thing.
You want it in your
What-
neighborhood?
I don't think anybody would like it in their neighborhood, even
There you go.
even the people living in Nisswa too.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm.
What's wrong with where it is?
We were trying to tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the fire department.
Good.
but yeah, and also we're not going to be getting much more support anymore in the future here from Crow Wing County is what I understand. So there's been issues about whether even to continue with the recycling, which to me, I think we need to. Right? I think we need to continue with that. But as well, let me go with others here first, but I would like to. But for me personally, I think it's important that we do that. Also, it's very, we're getting, it's going to get busier and busier.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That's
more.
what we're talking about.
Right. I mean,
You
all
want
with,
all that traffic in your neighborhood? I don't want it in mine.
I'm not-
I built and lived there for a reason.
we're all going to have more and more business. And that's,
I deal with Grandview every day,
okay.
so.
We can't debate like this, but I want to just say that we cannot stop growth. And we cannot stop more and more people coming. It affects all of us. And that's what we're trying to do, is to understand the best way to handle this. So, and we're not saying it's going yet. I'm still learning myself, so. But Dill, would you like to continue or no?
Well, I'd like to have Tom tell me again, how much does this cost the city right now yearly to have this facility in downtown Nisswa?
Okay, so the cost to operate the facility, which is basically the hauling charges, is $70,000 a year. The county pays for half currently. The county has indicated that they probably won't continue that after this year. The county is proposing to build a $2 million facility out at the existing landfill. They would like to close down all the remaining outside facilities and direct recycling to that out by the airport, if you're familiar with the county landfill. However, they have told the city that they could go it alone and continue to have a site, whether it's there or at our proposed new site. So it's likely to cost a similar amount going forward, and obviously escalating for inflation and then also growth.
So the Nisswa taxpayers are paying for that?
They are.
It's my understanding that there are a lot of tourists from up north, Walker and so on, that also use this facility that the Nisswa people are paying for. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay, that's all I have right at the moment.
Tom, if we were to, the way I understand it, we're gonna have to gate this in, if it's to stay where it's at, no matter what, wherever it's gonna be, it's gonna have to be gated in.
Correct.
Would it be feasible to make that accessible to Nisswa residents only? At least free of charge. If somebody's coming from out of town, they would have to pay for
We,
that service.
Excuse me, could I ask all you gentlemen to speak into the microphone? It's very difficult.
Absolutely.
so we have recognized that even with the existing site, you know, how do we control that? Well, up till now, the county has wanted this to be a free service, so we haven't charged for it. But obviously with the expense of building this, it's roughly a $350,000 facility. The added expense of if we have to pay the operated it totally, which is $70,000, that would be a huge impact to the taxes for this community. So yes, we are going to be looking at ways that we can charge for the service to outsiders. I think that's a must.
Do we have any idea what percentage of the recycling comes from Nisswa residents versus out of towners? My point being is, if we were to decrease the intake from out of towners, could we keep the facility where it's at? Because we wouldn't need as much increased capacity.
With security, we could regulate it that way. I think part of the success of it and the reason we haven't done that is when you start to limit that, then people look for other places to dispose of their material. Especially now that they've gotten used to the idea that they can get rid of it here. If you don't give them an alternative, they'll start dumping it.
Is that what residents up in Pequot and things are seeing, or? 'Cause they
At
don't
least for a
have their
while.
facility.
I guess the closest thing I can relate that to is originally the recycling when I started here was behind the pickle. And it was a mess because it was in that little hole that we pile the snow at. And if you're familiar with that. And, you know, my guys were over there every single day picking up stuff out of the mud. Well, when we moved it over to the fire hall site, people were continuing to place bags, trash there right next to the sign that said.
Exactly my point.
Can you let me finish? Thank you.
Please.
So anyway, we had a sign here at the old site that directed people to the new site behind the fire hall, and they would place bags of trash alongside that sign, directing them to go to the fire hall. Well, you have to have some enforcement of that kind of thing for a period of time after you make a move. So if we move it out to this new site, the same thing would have to happen again. That's true, and it's for sure. People are lazy, and that's the kind of thing that they do. You know, people abuse this site mercilessly too. They'll drop off mattresses, they drop off appliances that they are supposed to pay to get rid of. So what ends up happening with that material is the city staff loads it up in a truck, takes it over to the county landfill, and we pay the county to take that material.
I guess my concern is that if we do move it, since that's going to happen anyhow, I think the chances that people are gonna leave things in a residential neighborhood where there's virtually no police presence is gonna be considerably higher than if they're doing it 2 blocks away from the police department.
Perhaps. We do anticipate putting up security cameras and doing enforcement, but I do think that the new site will have some conveniences that we don't have at the current facility too. So I think once people get used to using it, the amount of abuse would be roughly the same.
What about an idea of modifying our current site to put a gate in front of it, put it up to whatever code it needs to be at, but decrease or make it for Nisswa residents only, and see what happens first before we, for one, look at increasing the cost, that $75,000 a year. That cost might come down if we don't have all these outsiders putting things in. Two, I guess just see what happens after we decrease the amount of outside traffic and see what our cost is. I'm concerned about moving this out there, taking on the cost of putting in a new facility and then having the same or more problems than we have now, and having the taxpayers of the city of Nisswa foot the bill for it.
It's a convenience for sure. You know, there's still always the option of falling back to the county's position of one site in Crow Wing County.
Right, and if we just modify the place that we're in now, and we decide to go ahead and go with what the Crow Wing County's done, we might be out a couple $1,000s to put on a gate and a security system versus $350,000.
I don't know it's gonna be quite that simple to upgrade that.
But do we really need to upgrade it by more capacity if we're not allowing outsiders to use it?
Just the fencing alone, I think, would have to be significantly improved. The fencing that's currently around it is mostly falling down.
I'm just saying that's significantly less expensive than holding.
You're right. Yes, it would be less. I don't want to leave the impression, just a second, Eric. I don't want to leave the impression that that site can be fixed
Right.
for $5,000. I don't
Sure.
think that's true.
I just, it has to be a lot less than moving it
It is.
altogether.
It could be, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to mention that,
Can you come up to the microphone, Eric?
can you even put a fence on the fire department because of their need for access back and forth, that was left open all the time? What difference does it make? Not really a lot.
It has to go on our recording and also we
Oh,
have people
sure.
listening online.
So yeah, my point was, and I just said in answering your question, these are all great questions, and I think many of which we've talked about before. And by the way, my name is Eric with Waste Partners. We're the company that services it, and we don't care where it is. I know you all care. I know you care, and the stuff back and forth. But my understanding is you can't restrict the access of your fire department
No.
coming in and out.
They can't.
Is why the fencing wouldn't necessarily work so good, just to keep that spot. And that was just a reminder I wanted to throw out there.
There are a couple reasons for it. The existing parking lot is also a helipad for life flight.
Yep.
And that's one of the main objections that the fire chief has to it remaining there is, you know, he thinks that someday life flight might need to use that again. And the recycling center there would be a potential conflict with it. And then obviously
Correct.
fencing of any kind, you can't fence off the roads coming and going from the fire hall. So laying it out in there could be a challenge.
Yeah, which is why I wanted to make the point that that would be a concern. I'm assuming of the cities to just block that location off for city residents. Well, how do the fire department get in and out conveniently while still stopping traffic coming in and going? So that was my point.
We would have to figure it out.
Thank you for coming, Eric.
But yeah, and all of this stuff I've seen so far, I've yet to see what the cost of this new plant is. What is that cost? You must have to pave a tarred road in there, fence the whole thing and do what you're doing. What is the estimated cost for moving it over there?
Okay, so you have to look at it, it's actually a much bigger project than just the existing recycling. We're also, we have a demolition site out there that we would be controlling better too. So when you bring leaf debris and trees, that stuff has already been going out there by the sewer ponds. This would give us better control of that. And yes, it includes fencing and security cameras, concrete pads for the boxes to sit on. And then there's also a shooting range for the police department to use. So the engineer's estimate for that a year ago was $334,650.
So I guess I'd say that's a substantial amount of money to invest in that. If all of a sudden it becomes somewhat of a lesser use or non-use facility, we're throwing a bunch of taxpayer money at something that may not be solving the problem again.
Potentially.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. How soon does this decision need to be made?
So right now, there is no deadline. The main reason we were looking at this to begin with was the county shift in on the recycling. You know, they pared down from, I think what was either 5 or 7 sites down to 3. And now they want to go down to 1. And so with that, we started looking at, well, we had other issues with it. We've always had the volume issue. Currently, and Eric can talk about this probably smarter than I can. The number of trips that he has to make on holidays and weekends to service the site as it is. We need to be able to have more bins on site to make it through those periods without it being serviced. So that was one of the main issues, was just the volume of it. And then
That's only if
controlling
we
it.
continue to allow outsiders to use it.
I think you're gonna find that if you try to exclude any group of people from using it, you're gonna have issues. It's better off, I think, to try to charge any user that wants to use it, to allow them to use it. So even our existing site, I think you'd be better
Well, and
to make
I agree with
some
that.
kind of
Right.
allowance for that.
But I think if you do start to charge people, there'll be a portion of those people who don't utilize it, which is fine, but that might take our volume down, which might negate the whole point in having to move sites. I'm just concerned that we move sites and it becomes so expensive that we end up going down, we end up getting rid of it to go with the county's 1 site location. Now we've spent $250,000 for something that we're gonna close down.
I think if you went through the trouble of building this and the expense of building it, I don't know that you would close it down. I don't think that the annual operation of it will be significantly higher than where it's at, because the main cost of it is the hauling. So that hauling will vary. So if the volume does go down, as you suggest, then the hauling costs will drop. So the actual site itself is minimal operation. We're not planning on staffing it. There'll be a little bit of electricity for lighting, but beyond that, the maintenance would be roughly the same, if nothing else better, because the mess will be contained inside of a fence to make it easier to collect. The site is designed to allow maintenance to happen easier. Bins can be moved on the site inside the fence to allow for snow removal, picking up of abuse. And I'm sorry, I lost where I was going with that, but anyway, I don't think the operational cost of the site will be significantly more than what we experience here, proportional to the volume. You know, it's always going to be volume based.
And I realize you probably don't have an answer for this, but when the fire department is concerned about that portion of their parking lot being used as a helipad, is there a particular reason that they can't use one of the ball diamonds or one of the other fields?
I don't know. I think the main objection to that is that you'd have to drive an ambulance out onto the ball field and you'd have damage to repair.
How frequently are we landing helicopters?
Does it matter if it's once, if you're the guy that's getting picked up?
It's not, you're absolutely right. And that one time they drive out on a baseball field, probably doesn't.
So the other problem you have there is, you know, I've also done snow plowing for the city. And when I've been over there maintaining that site, people that are coming and going from there won't move for my payloader. I don't think that they'll move for a helicopter either.
Welcome to Lower Roy Lake Road.
What's that?
Okay,
Just wait a minute.
I think,
Wait a minute, I think I'm driving a 30-ton machine.
okay.
I don't know about that.
And it's dangerous to land a helicopter on a paved road because of the sand and such.
I'm not a helicopter expert.
We're not stupid.
Yeah.
What's that?
We're not stupid either.
I never said you were.
Okay, did you want to say something?
If I could, yes. My name's Fred Heidman. I live on West Linden here in Nisswa. I'm a resident. And, you know, I think there's been some really good points made as to why the recycling should stay where it's at. There's some space behind it. There's probably good ways to work out so that it could stay there. if it gets moved, there's gonna be numerous problems. I mean, there just will, because it's gonna be a much more remote site. You can't get away from that. You know, then I'm hearing little things getting thrown in that seem like they want to kind of trigger and trip up what people have said here today. Helipad, great. Once a year, once every 5 years, whatever it is. If there's a helicopter that needs to land there and emergency people are there, if there's a car or two there, they will move. You know, they may not move for a snowplow because they get paid to sit and watch for 5 minutes while they, but if there's fire staff or police officers there, EMTs, and they say we have a helicopter coming, those people are gonna move. I mean, that's a very weak excuse. That just doesn't even seem to make it onto a list to me, unless there's some requirement with a helipad that restricts it. Apparently there isn't, because we have it right now. Then I hear some discussion about fencing. And I'm like, I hear people, and I don't know what, if maybe there's different ideas on what fencing would look like. You know, why does any of the parking lot of the fire department need to be fenced? Why not just expand the recycling area into the woods a little bit and put a fence around it, or with a couple gates or something so that it can be opened up on the front side? And it doesn't even affect the rest of the fire department. I mean, to me, that just listening, sounded like that was a wall being thrown up to like, oh, big fence problem. Well, I don't really see any fence problem. I mean, if a person looks at what is the minimum that's needed, I don't think anybody would say, hey, we have to fence in the whole fire department for recycling. So
Nobody suggested that. That's in an error to say that we're going to fence in the entire fire department.
you're kind of a smart ass.
No, I'm correcting an incorrect statement.
Well, what I said, if you check the record, is I said there was been I caught different viewpoints about how it would be fenced. And some was, well, it would affect the fire department. You can't stop the fire department, right? But I don't see any reason why fence would be a problem for the fire department at all with proper planning. To me, this, I'm not familiar. I would like to know more than I do about it. I think maybe public meeting, maybe Survey Monkey, survey the citizens, see how they feel about it. We had an 11% property tax increase. Now we're looking at, you know, considering another 350,000 for this project. You know, it's kind of like, where does the money stop? I mean, when do people quit getting bled out by project after project? With a little bit of work and adjustment, I really think this site could work excellent. And as it's been pointed out by many, it's a great location. Brings people to town. They're going to probably, many stop at the post office, stores, whatever, so on and so forth. It just makes all the sense in the world to keep it where it is. Had another thought I was going to share about it, but it kind of walked away, so I'll let it go for now. I would hope that, and I believe that as a commission that you will be wise enough to make an excellent decision for the community. The last thing is, you know, I think there's 50 people here roughly today. Nobody's in favor of it. I think that speaks pretty highly at 5 o'clock on a weekday that many people showed up. My hope is that you really take that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, did you have something?
I just wanted to address the fence thing so people knew the facts. It's the county that is saying if the facility is not enclosed or monitored, that they would lose the funding. They might lose the funding anyway. department heads want it all at one location, and so it might not be relevant. But the reason why the city went this direction in the first place to try to fence it in is so they could continue that 50% subsidy of being able to get the half the money from the county so that the city of Nisswa wouldn't have to support it all. So I just wanted to clarify that that's where the funding and why they want the fencing is to continue funding, but they could cancel that at any time and there's no promises from the county. So, but that is why it was made.
Okay, no, also I had one other question I was wondering about is, I noticed that the trash locations, they're in 3 level, I mean, they're deep, 3 deep. Does that cause trouble trying to move them around to empty them or anything? Or?
The style for recycling, the front load, they're easy to move. The old style, where it's what's called a rear load, where they backed up to it to dump it, those are hard to move and maneuver around. But the front load ones, they pick it up, they dump it, they move it off to the side. It's really simple and easy for us. The problem is we are out of room and you are growing. And I think since we started doing this, I don't even remember the year now, it was 4th of July week. I believe your previous contractor just took their containers and went away because they didn't want to do it anymore. Within a couple of weeks, we started doing it. Your facility has grown by 50% since we started. So some of it is that it was 9 locations, I believe, that the county had, and is down to, they only wanted 2. City of Nisswa, again, you mentioned 45% of the material collected in a drop site, not the curbside programs, but the drop locations is coming out of the city of Nisswa. And yes, you have every right to try to minimize your costs, but I think what Tom was trying to do was bring 50% funding from the county by appeasing them with what they're requiring, either it be manned or fenced and kept out. And so this was kind of what pushed the city into looking at what can we do so we don't have to pay that whole 70,000. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I remembered what I was going to ask. Fred Heidman again on West Linden. If I could ask Galen, just for clarification, and you had talked about residents, non-residents, and so on, and you've got some valid thought in there. But I was just curious, can you define that a little bit more? I mean, is a resident a 365 person? I mean, how about the whatever percentage of summer residents that are here that may bring their garbage and their recycling up here? I mean, are they in just the way you were thinking, are they included? I mean, is it like other towns, townships that could you just define that a little bit better? So we can understand exactly what you're thinking.
I guess I hadn't delineated enough. This area is significantly different than, say, downtown Minneapolis, where those people live there 365 days a year. I know we have a lot of transient residents. To be honest, I hadn't thought it that far through. I guess for me, anyone who owns property here should be able to, since they're paying taxes here, should be able to use that facility. That's not a deal breaker for me, but I'm just not a fan of people that are coming from Bemidji or Walker or Virginia or wherever they're coming from, getting to dump their recycling here on our dime if we lose the county's funding. To me, and this is just my thought, I don't speak for the whole committee, but to me, I think it would make more sense to start down that path to start to limit some of the costs for the city of Nisswa residents by either charging or not making recycling accessible to people outside of the city of Nisswa. See where we're at after a year or 2 of use along that route, and see what the county decides they want to do as far as either continuing to fund us or ripping our funding away altogether, and make a decision on either expanding our current site or moving sites at that point. But I think for right now, with as many variables as we have out there, with the county changing their mind and not knowing exactly what they're going to do, and our costs continuing to change, be it with inflation, with fuel prices, with Eric's going to have to raise his price at some point. He can't absorb that. I just think I think it's a leap personally to take this on, but that's, again, that's just my thought.
Sure. I appreciate you going into a little bit more depth with what you're thinking. It helps me understand because when I first heard you say it, I didn't know, exactly what you were thinking. You're thinking summer residents, local summer residents. I believe Lake Shore has some recycling, if I'm not mistaken.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think when I go by there, I see some in the back. Other communities, do we have any idea? I'll just ask this in general, maybe to Mark, because you're the chair here. Do we have any knowledge of where other people come from that drop off here? I mean, do they come from that far away, or is it mainly, the townships and, because, it gets confusing, as a citizen, it gets confusing. It's like, where is this coming from and how big of a deal is it? If we knew where they were coming from, could we talk to that community? See if we can work a little deal. I mean, that's something, it seems like there's a lot of potential discussion that could be had. And I think, as citizens, we're like, let's make sure that we have all the discussions that are really necessary, because it is great service. And, and as been pointed out, a lot of it ends up in other places if it doesn't get taken care of. So, but thanks for hearing my last
Yeah,
question.
and I appreciate that too. And I know that we've just discussed this plan several months ago before. I mean, even before then, this has been talked about within this group for a while. But my understanding, is that we have to do something because we are growing, and it's summertime when it just gets slammed, is what I'm hearing. So as far as a demographic breakdown of who dumps it, there's no, I don't even think you can get that. How are you going to monitor all the license plates on the car? All we do is go by the amount of tonnage that I'm hearing. And see, I'm not the expert on this. I'm just like you. I'm learning all about this, and we need, and I'm really glad that everybody's here for this feedback, because that's very, very important. Because otherwise we'll go blind and just make a decision, and it might not be the best. But I know that we have a lot of, there's a lot of possibilities of what could be done, a lot of options. But relying on what I've been hearing is that the best option is what I'm being told. And this is not my opinion yet, but the best option is that we need to expand that somehow. Okay, I think we all agree on that. And that's what I'm hearing as well. But how do we do that? Do we just not spend as much money like Galen's saying and expand, a little bit where we are right now, or put it all together out in this other spot in a more of an industrial setting? Because right now it's with the fire department itself. And then that's all residential around there with the ballpark. And I know that there's additional land that we can expand to. So that's definitely an option. But I know that I've been hearing that we are getting who was that? That was who was on, was that you, Paula? That you at the, yeah, Paula? Was that you that mentioned, you're on the planning commission, right? Park and Recs Commission, right?
As I explained to you, the Park Commission is getting ready to do a major master plan
Right.
for Park and Rec in the future. That's on the city's comprehensive plan. And there is no formal proposed use for that property at this moment.
Right.
I don't know where that 1.2 acres for pickleball came from. And as I said, the commission has not discussed how much would we need. Those are decisions that will go into the development of a master plan. That came forward just 2 days ago. So, we want to go forward with the Park and Rec's master plan. And perhaps there's the possibility of doing some concurrent planning. Are there other uses for that property?
Paula, could you come up here and speak into the mic so that we get it on recording for anybody who's watching remotely? Well, we can hear you, but I'm not sure it would pick up on the mic.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I just, as I pointed out earlier, the Park and Rec Commission is in the process of doing a master plan. We have put out RFPs for a contractor to do that. We'll be voting on that at the next meeting. And we will choose a contractor to go forward with developing a master plan for the park, which will look at the current park area. Do we want to expand the park area? Where could we expand it? What additional services should we provide to the people of Nisswa? And that property that's adjacent that we've been discussing about possibly expanding into that area will certainly be discussed as part of that and will come forward to this, the citizens. In the end, we'll be looking for public feedback during that planning process. So I'm simply saying maybe it's time to step back and just look at the overall use of that property. Is there a way we could do both? We don't know at this time. I'm just asking you to take a look at that.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then I know that we are looking at a master plan of that, but I don't know the details of that either. Obviously, Paula doesn't either yet. At least we don't have that. But one thing that was very interesting to me is what you mentioned about a monkey survey, with the city. That sounds like an interesting idea too, to get, I know right now everybody here is in a location where it's going to head to, right? And then there's other people in Nisswa too, where it's located as well. So they may have opinions as well. And so that would be good to listen to or to have as well.
Would it be worth us holding off on making a decision until the Parks Committee makes up their master plan and see what they're planning on doing with that 1.2 acre lot?
Yeah, and that's that's something else that we can do. And I think I'm not against that at all. I know that we are sort of under a time limitation is what I've been hearing, that the county really doesn't want to keep funding us. And how are we going to effectively use to continue the program, and whether to have it moved or in the current location, like what you were saying. So how can we handle that? And I think a lot of that could be done through more input as well.
Paula, do you have an idea of when that decision will be finalized on the master plan? I know that's opening up a can of worms, but.
Well, we just recently asked them to go ahead with
The city council just authorized the ability to hire a contractor. So at the May meeting of the Parks and Rec Commission, which is the first Thursday of the month at 5:00 here, we'll be choosing, at least this is my understanding, we've received several bids and we'll be looking to choose a contractor to do that master plan, but it'll be 6 months or more probably before, because we've got to engage a public process, get public comments. So I don't know how long, but it won't be in the next couple of months. It'll be a 6 to 8 month process before that master plan is finished.
Yeah.
And Tom, what type of timeline are we on with the county?
Well, it's one, a county thing, but two, it's also a capacity.
Right.
So, every 6 months that we wait, we're running out of space.
Well, I mean, even if we approve this today or made our recommendation, we don't, just so everybody's aware, we don't approve this. We just make the recommendation to go to the next level. Even if we made the recommendation, this wouldn't get built this summer, would it?
Most likely not.
So
it would probably be next summer.
Okay, I just think we should wait to see what the Parks Committee is.
Well, I agree with you too. And this cost, I guess if we did see this before, I didn't realize it was $333,000.
And Joe, this has
clearly been in front of this committee at least once.
Yeah.
I realize that, but.
Well,
this
I'm
number
just saying,
here is
I don't
today.
remember it. It's me
Okay.
personally, I don't remember it.
Okay, that's fair.
But I have a feeling that what would happen down the road, especially if we end up getting stuck with the full the full amount of this and the county goes away, is the bag fee is gonna go up to $9 or $10. I can leave one at the end of my driveway for $5. I can have recycling at the end of my driveway. I just, that is a lot of money for,
If you move it out by me, they'll leave it at the end of my driveway.
You know, I would like to address the remote location and the dumping a little bit. So most of you are probably aware of the location of the county landfill, and it's fenced in, and that's also a remote location. There's not bags of trash left at the front gate of the county landfill every day for them to pick up. And I think this would operate a lot the same.
We'll put a dumpster at the end of your driveway then.
That's not a constructive statement.
Yeah, really, Tom?
No, really, sir, it's
You're all
not.
for this. You know what?
Okay.
It has to, no,
If you live where I live, you're complaining about
Please,
something
let's not
happening
get into that
by
type of discussion.
firewall.
Please, this is not constructive and you cannot continue, we can't continue to discuss these things. We're trying to work through it and we're trying to listen as well.
You should finish the project you started 4 years ago. like
Yes,
the
but
trail.
please,
Let's start another.
we've
one.
listened to what you've said. Please be quiet for now, unless you have something constructive to say.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, are there any other opinions?
yeah,
here?
I think, you know, that this is a public hearing and this is what this is for, to hear, you know, what the public's thinking about this. And I guess what I personally am hearing is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now, on the other hand, I guess my biggest concern is when we look at options, other alternatives that I've heard several of the public mention, where are these other options? And right now, the only one would be to expand where we're at. I mean, that's the one that we've been dealing with for the past, I don't know, nine months or so. And then the first question I have when we do that is if we're going to expand, I mean, what is the highest and best use of that property? And if we're in the middle of looking at, you know, Park and Rec Commission doing an RFP, you know, once you do something to that property, you've pretty much lost the ability to go back and maybe not, but you know, once you do something permanent back there, it's going to be tough to revert it back to, you know, what you're using it now, or, you know, undeveloped. If you're going to do a Park and Rec purpose, if you go ahead and do some kind of a recycling expansion, that's it. You know, then how much more property do you have that's adjacent to a city park? I don't know. I guess that plus the concerns of the fire department would be my biggest issues on doing the expansion. However, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I hear that loud and clear.
Paula, I have a question for you. If we did decide to modify the site that we're at and push that further into the woods, would that affect any planning that you guys have currently? I'm just wondering if we should get ahead of the horse by doing that instead.
Well, as I
waiting
said,
for
we
you.
don't have any proposed plans for that property. And as I mentioned earlier, I have no idea where that 1.2 acres for a pickleball came from, because we have not discussed at any time, how much do we need for pickleball courts? That's part of what the master plan will address is, you know, what are the new, what kinds of new park and rec facilities do we want? Where could we put them? So I can't answer that question right now because we don't have any proposed plans. That's what we're going to be addressing in our plan.
All right.
I mean, you know, look at the dimensions that you have set aside for the recycling center at the new proposed location. Could those dimensions fit in there? Could you have a different way to approach it through back by Church Street? I don't know. I'm just asking you to take a look at those options and telling you what the park plan is.
Well, I think we'd have to go in through the fire hall. I mean, putting it off of Church Street, now that would just be, everybody on Church Street would be in here saying the extra traffic. So I think we'd almost have to do it.
Well,
where-
right now, there's only one house that's on Church Street that goes into the road that goes in there, the
Right,
church.
but you'd have
I
people
mean,
driving up and down the street. There'd be more traffic, just
Well,
like you're, but so
yeah.
I think, yeah, if we could do it coming in right next to the fire hall and just, have something in there.
Tom, how much would we need to expand into that 1.2 acres to make the capacity the size that you think is appropriate?
I don't know for absolute certain, but basically you could take the layout of the concrete pads that are shown on the new concept drawing and try to picture them anywhere over there, and you'd be at least in the ballpark.
What are your thoughts, Eric?
It actually doesn't take a bunch more. We can put more containers in exactly the amount of space a container takes. What Tom had done with the proposed site is we had like 4 locations. We took, just like there's 6 paper containers and there's 9 commingled containers and there's 9 cardboard containers. We put a cluster of them in 4 different locations so that you didn't have all the people stacking up in one place. So that's what the additional property helps do, is it frees a little of that congestion. But the dumpsters itself will just take more of those same dumpsters. We'll just stack more in front of it. One issue with that is just like they were mentioning here with the, if the helicopter is coming, the police are going to get people to move cars. Well, I move containers out in that parking lot. They don't move quite so quickly back out of the way. It's not like they're just driving themselves back. I got to move them back. But
I want to add one thing to what you're saying, Eric. So at the current site, alongside the community center, there's dumpsters that are parked there.
yep,
To me, that's off the site. You're off the concrete. You're
Yep.
on the grass, and it's actually interfering with the one. I mean, this is a minor issue, but it is interfering with the grass and sprinkler system for the community center.
yep.
I don't think that's ideal to do that. So to me, that tells me we already need a bigger spot
Correct.
than what we have.
Yeah, we don't care about the dirt. Other people do.
Right.
And yes, the sprinklers do hit our dumpsters and you don't get a lot of the sprinkling that is there. And so, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to tell you for size, because it just continues to grow every year. It's just growing. And it is something that the dumpsters, the style we went to is quicker to pick up and easier to move. So just adding more of them is fine on our part. The rest is kind of what you want for service.
Eric, what would you think of if we extended out further? So you're 3 rows deep right now. If we were to extend that out further, but we left one less column so that you could take them out and put them into an empty column, so that you're
That
not
would be
stacking those
optimal.
out into the parking lot where potentially a helicopter would have to land.
Yep.
But that would be a dedicated spot for you to be able to put your containers while you're swapping them out. Would that work okay for you?
Yeah, if I was given some property, actually my son is really good at making the dimensions and can make a spot for you, but I think that wasn't really considered as an option before. And yeah, we could look at it, we could place it out, we could give you an idea of what would work optimally for that. I would say a diagonal would work the best to create some room, but
So in defense of the plan that you've seen, the concept, what we were told was we couldn't expand out any further into the park property.
Okay.
There was expected use of that. There was anticipated use of that.
Right.
You've seen
Yep.
a proposed, or I shouldn't say proposed, but a one idea for that.
Right. And so that's where I was confused when I came in today, was prior to today's meeting, I thought that we had to basically move because there wasn't the option for expanding the site that we're at now because of the Parks Department. If they don't have that space dedicated already, I guess I'm just curious as to why we can't utilize some of that.
So my understanding has always been that site was reserved for park.
Okay.
And if you go over there and look at it a little bit,
Right.
look at the mature trees that are
Yeah,
there.
I
Do you
did
want to see
yesterday.
those cut down for a recycling site? I mean, maybe these folks do,
Right.
maybe they do. But I think there's others in town who wouldn't want that.
Right. I guess my thought is if we had to expand the site beyond what it is now, if we could make it deeper than it is. I think if I remember right, there are 4 columns that you have over there, Eric. Is there 3 or 4 columns? Three columns. If we were to make that 2 columns and leave the center open so that he could take out his bins, empty, put it in the center column, take out the next one empty. If he was able to do that and we were able to expand that back another 20 feet, you wouldn't be cutting down a whole lot of trees to expand it 20 feet backwards.
I think I also want to expand this just a little bit more. So outside of the helicopter, so the parking lot is used for more than a helicopter. It's also for parking for the fire department personnel when they come to fight a fire.
Yeah.
So the more we expand this recycling, the more cars are going to be in that parking lot too. I would really like to get the fire chief to write something up, what his actual opinion of this is.
I would appreciate that as well. I really wish that he would have been here
What I'm
tonight.
telling you is what he's verbally told me.
Right.
And he might have some more concrete.
Being that
reasons
he's the
why.
biggest stakeholder in this, really. I really wish that he would have showed up today so we could ask him these questions.
Yeah, I didn't ask him to do that. I didn't anticipate this being quite so
Sure.
contentious.
And I may have misunderstood your question. It's 8 columns wide and 3D.
And 3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could make a column in the center that would be centrally located for you guys to be able to shuffle your
Excellent.
units around, to me, that would make sense.
Okay, yeah, I know that you've wanted to say something for a while here. Did you want, is it okay? Okay, fine.
Real short, just to make 2 points. Last year, helicopter did use the ball field. A lot of us were in town, we saw they have used the ball field as a helipad. Number 2, not to be argumentative, sir, not at all. But you're going to cut down trees for a pickleball court too.
That's a good point.
About the helipad, the space behind the fire department is always going to be plowed. 6 months out of the year, that ball field's either going to be too soft to drive an ambulance on or to land a helicopter in, or it's going to be covered in feet of snow. So.
Okay, I think at this point, do we have any other comments here?
Oh, she wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who wanted to? Oh, yeah. Would you like to say something yet?
I live on the upper end of Church Street, have been for 40 years. I use the recycling and also in a former life owned a helicopter. So I'm quite familiar, in addition to watching them come down across from Carrilla Real Estate on the open field there year after year after year. So I was not aware that the fire hall, the parking lot, and that would be a site for helicopter emergencies. Can that be used as it is right now? In addition to that, the police always comes ahead of a helicopter approaching and landing to cordon off the area. So no one could go near the site if and when that was the case, which is not that frequent, thank God. So I didn't quite understand nor the interference with the fire trucks. At best, there are 3 to 4 cars whenever there's a meeting in behind the fire station. That's it. The people that are coming in are not coming through straight from going towards the fire department. They come off Old 371 and Park Road and then hang a left and a right to get to the dump. So it didn't make sense to me what was explained, why it's happening. The cost, yes, I do understand that. So if that's the reason, we should know it. But it's just a little hard to comprehend the other. And expanding the site, going a little deeper into the woods, who owns that from the site back to Church Street? Is that City of Nisswa property?
Yes, that's my understanding. It's a city of Nisswa property.
Okay. So why can this not be pushed a little further by removing a few trees possibly? And would be a lot cheaper than spending 250,000 to relocate into an area where residents really are against that move.
Mhm.
So wouldn't that be simpler to do?
Mhm.
To just expand the current into the wood line? Wouldn't take that much to do it.
Tom, could we cordon off a portion of that little wooded site for parking for the fire department cars? That would be reserved for them.
Say
So
that again.
right in here. We cordon off a little portion of that and just put gravel down for the fire department employees.
The idea is that they want to be able to access the building directly. And they want to get up close to it.
Right. I mean, they have doors on this side and they have doors on this side.
Right.
They can leave and they're going to leave out of this side anyhow.
Right.
As a former firefighter, I don't see the reason why they need to have that access.
I think what,
Sorry.
excuse me, I think what happens is, they come from all areas of the city.
Right.
When they come to a call. And so
Right.
there are some that are coming from the Church Street area
Sure,
and they would want to access the back of the fire hall for parking.
sure.
But, it's not ideal. Let's put it that way. If they're competing with a space that's for emergency management.
Right.
And
I
so-
think, I think the whole cutting of the trees down thing is a moot point. They're right there building stuff around. There's been more trees cut down in Nisswa in the last 2 years than I've seen in 20 years. So I don't think that's an issue. I'd love to see this overlaid right into that 1.2 acres. Where people can drive next to that, they can go in there, they can have all their recycling. It won't touch this parking lot at all. And I think it would be a heck of a lot cheaper than that. That's my thought.
Okay, so I think we've been at this now for an hour and a half. And I think it's a very good that we're getting I really appreciate everybody bringing all these things because I learn a lot. And I think there's a lot of good questions out there. And I think there's a lot of good things that we need to look at here. So but it appears to me right now, we really can't move forward. I mean, to make a recommendation other than, does anyone want to?
I would like to make a recommendation that we put that in here and see what it looks like and see what, if we're talking costs, what's it gonna cost to, take the trees out and let's bring that to the people in Nisswa, if they mind taking a few trees out and having that where it is. It wouldn't touch that parking lot. It would go right alongside of it. Yeah, and as far as the park goes, there's land over here too, if they want to put some pickleball in. I think this is plenty big to expand that would be my thought, is to look at that and maybe get an idea on the cost of that.
And also, I sort of like the idea of that monkey survey too.
Yep, absolutely.
I like Tom's suggestion of getting the fire chief's opinion and concerns on paper.
Yes, that as well. So,
Because he is the biggest stakeholder here and I don't want to dismiss his concerns without
Right.
hearing them. But I propose that we hold off on doing anything.
okay, so how about if we should we be making a motion here?
I think with what you're asking for, I would need time to prepare that. So we
Right.
could come back at a future meeting with the overlay like Cam is suggesting. Monkey survey would probably take a month or more to complete.
Right. So I think maybe the main three things are looking at that property that you were talking about. And Galen, get the fire chief information and a monkey survey.
And the RFP for the Park and Rec Commission to get the comprehensive plan.
Right. To get that information for us as well.
Because Paula, now that you're aware of what's going on at our level as well, can you talk with your committee and let them know what we might be proposing, what we are looking at in this 1.2 acres to see if that's feasible with your long-term plan.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be meeting in May, but you know, we will be proceeding with that master plan. Choosing the contractor in May.
I just think if we can work alongside instead of having these two committees.
Mhm.
Right. I'd rather see us work alongside of her committee rather than be siloed into two
Right.
separate entities.
So those points then. And so I guess I would recommend that we just drop this for now.
I would say you table it.
Table.
To
it, yeah.
table it,
Yes.
not drop it. Okay, let's table it then, please.
Right, because something does need to be done.
Yes.
And with many thanks for everybody out here today. Appreciate it. And please come back when we have this again. Yeah, we'll let you know. Okay, so the next point on the agenda, are we okay right now to go ahead, or did you want a 5-minute break or anything?
Up to you guys.
I think.
I can keep going.
Everybody keeps forgetting.
Well, then let's just keep going here. Okay, the next item.
Leave it here, it's gonna have to happen.
Okay, the next item that we have on here then is the appointment of Bill to a new term.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Bill. So,
On a new term?
do you want a new term?
I'm sorry, I was talking.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
So the next item is to appoint Dill to a new term.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay,
Give me a minute so I can close the doors.
sure. Okay. Do I have a motion to appoint Dill for the next term?
I make the motion to appoint Dill for another term.
I'll
of
second.
4 years. Yes.
Yep. Second, okay, we have a recommendation and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's carried then. Welcome, Bill.
Congratulations, Dill.
Congratulations. Okay, then the next item on the agenda is a street name sign policy.
All right, so all this is, this policy is a draft, and it's a copy of what the county already has. So the county does this to all the smaller jurisdictions underneath the townships, cities. If they come in and place signs on our streets, they charge us for it. And what we're doing with this is we have a significant number of private roads, private developments, such as Grandview's new development. They require signs. And we bill them for it. This policy just puts that in writing. So that our billing is consistent, our signs are consistent.
Yeah.
That's all it does.
And currently we have nothing, no policy. And so we want to uniform all the signs, basically.
I did read all that. That's what you like. I mean, that's.
Yeah, all I
You
did is
have no
I
problem?
changed a few words to city of Nisswa versus county of Crow Wing County.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Any further discussion on the sign policies? Are any questions?
Just a quick question. Tom, this is pretty standard, right?
Yes.
The policy, the specs for the signs and all that.
Mhm.
Have there been any issues that have come up that have prompted you to bring this right now?
Mostly what was driving it is we just recently had a request from Grandview to provide signs for their new development.
Yeah.
And we wanted to be consistent with what we charge, not only them, but anybody going forward. We don't want to be seen as doing a favor for somebody or charging
Right.
more, charging less. So I wanted this in writing. The county actually had sent a policy out not long ago regarding that. So it was kind of a no-brainer to just modify it a little bit to suit our needs, and that's what you got.
Okay. So can I get a,
I would move that we accept and recommend to the city council to adopt this street name sign policy and procedure.
do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed? Carried. So now the next one on here is the driveway standard discussion. They're looking forward to developing a standard. Examples of the standard from Cross Lake and Orinoco are included in the packet. Like, talk about that.
So
Tom.
these are the two sheets that I have included in the packet. And so really all I wanted to have was a discussion. I don't have a draft policy or anything ready to go. This came up in relation to the development that's going up by Bass Lake Road. You all probably are familiar with that. Well, there is also there would be a driveway there that would serve, I believe it's 3 houses. So we were looking for a standard for that kind of a driveway with clearing. And again, it comes down to public safety, getting the ambulances in, garbage trucks, things of this nature. That's mostly where this is coming from. And so these two examples of a potential standard came from Woodstuff. So I guess what I would like to hear from you gentlemen is, do you feel there's a need for a driveway standard like I'm proposing?
Is this something that's going to apply to just new construction going forward or to existing?
This would be only for new construction at this time.
I think with the amount of building and development that is happening around here, I think it would be a good idea to have some sort of a standard. So yeah, I think we do have to have something.
And then I guess my next question would be if any of you have things you would like to see included in the standard that maybe you didn't see here, or things that you did see here that you think are too much.
Well, my understanding is this is for safety too, for the fire trucks, for ambulances,
Plowing.
plowing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so if this is, and you like this here right now, this figure 5.1,
I
is
think,
that it?
I would need to study this a little more myself.
Mhm.
What I'm looking to do is model a draft policy I'm going to make from what I had provided you here.
Okay,
And so I'll come back with a draft from this.
Sure.
What I wanted to know is, I didn't want to waste the time preparing a draft if just the concept of having a standard was, why are we doing this?
right.
I guess my
What-
only question to be to Joe, have you seen is there anything in these two that he's presented us that you would like to see expanded upon? Anything from a civil engineering side or an ease of use, safety standpoint that you've seen in your past that we should include?
Pretty standard.
Okay. Because it'd be far easier to do it now than,
Now, Tom, you had gotten this from like other towns or something?
Yeah, actually, this first one with the trees is from Cross Lake,
Cross Lake, okay.
and then this one is from Orinoco. So I would look at those, and probably with Joe's help, I would come up with something that would be a 1-page thing, probably.
Yeah,
could you reach back out to those public works directors at those two cities and see if there's anything that they would have liked to have had included in this that didn't
I
get
could do
included?
that, yeah.
Oh, this one.
What's that?
This one,
Cross Lake, right?
we did it.
oh, you did that, okay, good.
Is there anything since you guys did that you wish you would have included?
I would rather have heard ideas that you guys would like to include in this group.
Oh.
And then look at that.
Okay.
Then
I guess-
to give you my opinion now, might convince you that to do or not to do it.
Okay,
It is for private roads too.
Right.
It's not about the public.
I think for me, I'd like to have something to react to, just not being real familiar with all the issues that you would potentially want to address with this. I was just thinking of like the League of Minnesota Cities, don't they have model ordinances that you
They-
can borrow from?
They do. I don't know if they have anything in particular for this.
Okay. Well, and then the next best thing is to go from community to community and see what they have, whatever issue you're looking for. And borrow from them and see what seems to make sense for Nisswa.
Yeah, really, if you look at this a little closer, it outlines a minimum cleared width of 20 feet.
Yeah.
It shows a driving surface of a 10-foot minimum. Well, that seems pretty logical, I think, to most
Yeah.
folks. I mean, 10 feet, your car is 8 feet. Truck, obviously with mirrors, even a large, say 3/4 ton pickup, you need that 10 feet to maneuver
Yep.
that.
We've already done the roads too. We have that.
Yes,
that
this
we-
is a kind of a niche. We're not
Yeah.
allowing a lot of private stuff anymore.
Mhm.
So this is really just dealing with a kind of a specific
Yeah.
Okay.
scenario.
Yeah, I,
Well, even, if it's over 700 feet long and, if you have a turnaround.
Yeah.
It's just,
Well,
okay,
it's mainly for the fire department.
Yeah.
To get into the house, if
Right.
it's a longer one, then just make the curves and the turns to have at least enough space there that they can do. 15 foot is probably a minimum for a fire truck. I think 13.9 probably is more.
School
realistic.
buses, think school buses, you can have mirrors and lights on those and, if the trees are down too low. And we're talking about a situation where we're serving more than one house. This is probably 2 or 3 homes. And so I think the other thing this does is it probably prevents some arguing among the 3 residents or the 2 residents.
Yeah, if it serves more than 2, then it would need to turn over to a road.
Sure.
Even a private road. would still-
Right, that's true.
Tom, would it be worth, since we're gonna be talking with the fire chief anyhow, to see if that 70-foot minimum is enough for him to be able to get his trucks turned around?
Well, I'm sure Tom will do that anyway, coming up with an example for us, right?
Yeah, I could. I think what I'll do too is I'll look at our existing road standard.
Mhm.
And Joe might know this off the top of his head. I don't, but that minimum might be more than we require for our full-size roads.
Yeah.
So we would, the
Minimum
shape of the
road
cul-de-sac, the size of that, you show, Orinoco shows a 70-foot minimum there. And I'm not sure what we require on our main road stand. Okay. Okay, so this is a little smaller.
Right.
Okay.
And that's probably fine. But for a public road, it would be a 45 foot.
Okay.
That makes for a 15-foot boulevard. It gives you a 60-foot radius actually for right away.
Sure.
And then the road would sit at the 15-foot.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are sufficient hammerhead to do the turning, if they pull in, back up, pull out.
Okay.
So even the fire truck.
Okay.
So,
You do know that the reason they want the turnaround for a fire truck for that is when they get the wrong address.
That's what I meant. I want to make sure they can do it quickly.
Pull anywhere right away. But
Right.
When they get to the wrong one, they have to turn around.
Correct.
That's when it's needed for these to happen. It's still an emergency situation.
well, then I think we definitely need to have that from you. So if you could make that, I guess.
Those fire trucks have huge tail swings because their back axle is set so far forward from the
Right.
rear bumper. I would just hate to have to see them struggle in a cul-de-sac trying to get turned around. I'd rather have it addressed and large enough to begin with than have it too small to begin with and try to change it down the line.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
do we need to do anything?
No, there's
on this?
nothing. This was just a discussion so that I knew what to do, what to provide in the draft.
Okay.
This is a good idea, Tom.
It's a great idea,
I think
yeah.
it's a great thing to move forward on.
You think you can have that at the next meeting or no?
There's a good chance.
Okay,
This also, there's no deadline for this.
Right.
right.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Are we going to have the fire chief come and talk to us, or is he gonna talk to you, or How is this going to work? Because I think he has a lot to say about this.
He does, and I guess I didn't anticipate quite so many detractors from this idea. I really think for the community as a whole, I think this recycling center, given the parameters I was given, and one of them was that park land was off limits. You know, that's been that way for a long time. I wasn't allowed to use that. That's why the dimensions of the site are the way they are now. We were given a limit at that time. So we didn't even consider that when we were looking at designing the concept that we've been sharing with you. As far as getting the fire chief involved, at a minimum, I want him to put something in writing, so it's not coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And he might be willing to come, and if I invite him, I think, I just didn't anticipate we needed it.
Would it be,
This pickleball diagram.
So I think that's a concept, or, maybe that's the size that they need for what they're looking at for their master plan. If you wanted to provide a pickleball court, it has a minimum dimensions, and I don't know how many of them they were looking at. But I think that's what she did, is she just simply took what would be needed for that one part of what they were looking at, and she placed it on this 5 acre.
So that's where that came from.
So that was the park and rec director that put.
From
that together
Amber?
for you. Okay.
And so if you look a little closer at this 5 acre site, you'll notice that a big chunk of it includes the ball field.
Yeah,
Well, we're not gonna tear that up,
yeah.
and as far as the trees go, okay, there's quite a few people in this room today who don't think they're important, but I guarantee you, when we send out a survey, there are going to be just as many people who are going to be concerned about the
There are
trees.
a lot of people, including me, that don't like to see those red pines go.
Right.
They already cut down a whole bunch of them.
And I don't remember, and it's before my time, I don't know how the city came to own that. I thought there was some restriction to that when we obtained it, but I don't know. And yes, the one person had a good point too, about, if you're gonna place some kind of a park facility in there, yes, you're gonna be cutting trees down. But probably for the general population of the city as a whole, they'd probably rather cut trees down for a park than for a dumpster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that we've talked about before about this site is it's already being used for one. The site was proposed for some other materials and stuff, so there's already traffic going there. But planning wise down the line, that's where the backage road would go to. So that would relieve all that traffic off of Lower Lake Road and Hazelwood Drive that you're talking about.
have we got?
Then you'd need the
approval for
backage
that?
road first to get any of these,
That's
true. Yeah.
Saying that part of that whole picture.
Yeah.
Right.
Involves.
I think those of us on this committee understand that.
Yeah.
But I don't think the people that were in the audience tonight understand
But there's
exactly
no
where that
guarantee
back.
That's coming either.
That was my next question. Do we know for sure that that's gonna happen and what timeline?
And we do not.
It's, this is all the big picture. of planning,
Right.
And
Right.
it's, would it go this year, next year, 5 years?
Right.
It depends on, on what the drive is for.
Because we don't own all of that land at that baggage road, so we would need to acquire that first, be it through eminent domain or through outright purchasing or whatever the case.
Yeah.
So this is a long ways down the line before this would even happen.
We have a name for it though.
I wouldn't say it's a long.
Well,
I guess
Lifetime.
long is,
I'm just saying that's part of it.
Yeah.
So eventually down the line, if that was the site, and maybe, you're right in the fact that, well, maybe we don't put the chicken and the eggs and everything first and second, but down the line, that is what we've been trying to do with the city a little bit, is do some forethought, look into some planning. One of the things that went into this site is that backage road is a reality down the line. So that would really fit in nicely perhaps.
Right.
There. Nobody has to go downtown, they go right off the 371 and pick the backage road up.
Yeah.
Well, and at that point too, if you got this backage road going through a bunch of land, you could put the recycling center out there, then it doesn't go by anybody's house. You know, I mean, it's just maybe move it at that point.
It's
right
there.
Yeah,
If that back road, that would be right.
It's, yeah, it's literally right next.
but it maybe, it just, yeah, could be somewhere else, somewhere located somewhere else if we're gonna have to get a bunch of land to put this road in. Maybe, you know, between 77 and Lower Roy Lake Road, there's a spot that could go. It's not gonna affect anybody residential wise.
It really is right there. I mean,
Yeah,
this way the city can also watch it.
yeah,
Where it's proposed, you know, the city guys go by there a couple times a day.
yeah.
And I think something that's missing here tonight is that anything we do to the existing one is going to require somebody working there. The city's gonna have to hire somebody. You put a fence in up there or whatever, you gotta have somebody there.
That
I'm
was,
talking about in town here now.
Yeah.
To expand that.
Do we really?
No. Why?
well,
Well, how are you gonna patrol that? How are you gonna charge people, for instance, if you have nobody there?
Well, right now it's on your honor.
right now you're on your honor, but it will have to be fenced in no matter where it's left.
Yeah,
So what is part of this proposal and part of why it costs what it does is the gate is electronic. The gate would have a code. We were planning on, one of the ideas was to sell codes to transients, you know, some seasonal and others that are from out of the area. You would sell them a code that they could enter that facility for an amount of time, so that we don't have to man it. That's how we would like to do that.
you know how quickly that code would get spread around?
But if that code is only active for 15 minutes while you're there and then it goes away,
Well, one guy would have a full load in the back of his truck from all of his buddies too.
and he might, but that's gonna take some severe planning from a lot of people. If you're coming back
But
from Bemidji.
we
you're
already
not-
have problems with people dumping stuff at the gate and all that.
Right.
As that grows,
No matter,
it's just gonna get worse.
no matter what we do, including leaving it where it is, there will always be abuse. You
Yeah.
have to, you're just trying to minimize it.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do. As far as the traffic goes, and what comes first, the backage road or the recycling? Well, the recycling also makes a stronger argument for the backage road. And the reason we want that is there's significant funding that's gonna come from the state to build that when it happens. Right now, the most likely time period is somewhere around 2030 that would appear, the backage road. Well, we have to make some kind of alteration of our recycling center before that, just because of where it's sitting with capacity. It's like I said, and you may not have heard, you know, we're already placing dumpsters on the grass by the community center. Well, I don't think that's ideal. I don't think that's a good thing to be doing. One, you're gonna bust up the pavement, running them off the edge of the pavement. Two, you're wrecking the grass. Three, you're wrecking the sprinkler system for the grass. And if the truck driver isn't careful getting them off the pavement far enough, now they're gonna be out in the driving lane for the fire trucks. So there's some issues there. And I think, you know, people have said, well, it's no big deal. The fire trucks will get them to move. Well, time is everything. If you have somebody dying of a heart attack or the house is burning down or there's a car accident on 371, do you want them arguing with somebody who's dumping trash here?
So I think you lay that in there, it would fit in there fine. The dimensions of that will definitely go in 1.2 acres. And you don't have, you know, you have a fence there that keeps them away from the, you know, from the fire hall. So you're just driving next to it, you know, it's not gonna impede. And I think it would be considerably cheaper, and I just think it would solve a lot of problems. But anyway.
Those costs that you're looking at too, it's not a lot, but some of the costs that are in there are to upgrade kind of the road around what they're already using, plus to bring up the fire, the shooting. So, you know, you could probably 25%, a little more off that.
There's also an impound lot.
Yeah, and
for
plus the police impound lot. So you're not only, if we were to just say, we don't want to put a recycling center there, but, you know, maybe that's a good spot for the shooting range and a good spot for the police impound lot, and turn it into that. You know, I mean, there should be a use for it either way. And then with the long term of the road going in there, it just kind of makes that a little bit more of a desirable location.
Where's your impound lot now?
Right now it's by the cell tower and it's too small. And one of the issues we have is we have a lot of people accessing our fenced in maintenance site. And so there was an idea that this would separate that from that and give us a little better control of that.
So that's at the west end there. So they have to go through your maintenance site to get there. Yeah.
You know, we were storing diesel fuel out there, parts for our equipment. It's not manned. There's no, I shouldn't say this out loud. There is minimal security on the buildings there. If so, once they're inside the fence.
Yeah.
You know,
In order to talk with the police chief, is that something that would have to happen at a public meeting like this? Or is that something where the committee can talk with him separately? I just want to make sure it's gone about the right.
I would have to ask Jenny what the exact rules are as far as quorum, I guess is what you would call that.
It would
I
have
just
to be
don't want
public.
him to get, I don't want him to get bullied. I don't want him to get bullied by potentially people that don't agree with him or that are upset about him saying that he wants us to move the recycling facility.
You mean the fire chief?
Yes.
Why would it have to be an open meeting to talk to the fire chief or the police chief? Of non-elected people? Really?
All appointed, any governmental committee or council
Mhm.
has to only gather, if they're gonna gather as a.
They got to follow the same rules.
Have to follow the same rules.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Well,
only
thank you for
two can
clarifying that.
meet privately.
Anything
Anything
past-
more than two, you have to, it has to be
Okay.
public.
That doesn't mean you have to, you don't have to allow public comment or a public hearing, so to speak. You don't have to allow that. But you do have to allow somebody to attend if they want to attend.
Okay. Well, I would like to propose that we ask him to come and discuss his concerns and what he would like to see with our committee. But we limit
What do you think of,
just potential exposure, I guess.
what do you think of this idea? I mean, that doesn't have to be a public hearing to get his comments.
Right.
So we could just either the next meeting or whatever meeting works for him to have him come and just address that one thing. I mean, it'll be public knowledge, it'll
Right.
be on the notices, but we're not gonna call it a public hearing.
Right. I want us to be able to ask him questions. Because I'm concerned that if he writes in an email or in a memo what his concerns are, if we ask him about, well, what if we did X or what if we did Y? Would you be on board with that, or would you be okay with that? Or what would your concerns be about doing this and that? We wouldn't be able to do that quickly with an email or a memo like we would if he was
Yeah,
here.
I don't think he'd have a problem coming. I just gotta ask him.
Yep.
And
If he
we
would do
can
that,
make
that'd
it
be
a closed meeting. I mean, it's open, it's public, but, and it would be recorded.
Right.
Right.
It's for public use, but
And I
we
think
can
that would
do
be
that
great.
without the public
Right.
at that point.
And
But
I
we
think
have
that
to
would be great, because
designate
then
it that
people,
way.
if people did want to hear what he had to say or wanted to hear our concerns, they would be able to do so.
Really? Okay.
Personnel related, basically.
Oh, so maybe we'll have to have it open to public.
Because I think people would feel that we're being more transparent with things if that was the case, if they could
Yeah.
either go on YouTube and watch the video or.
Well, then the question is if we cannot have comment from the public. We are just doing this. That's the way we'll have to
We
set
had
it
that
up then,
option
but we can
tonight
make
too,
it.
once we entered into our discussion.
Mhm.
The public comment should have been reserved. You could have asked for it again, I think, at the end,
Mhm.
but we couldn't even go through any of the information that I had,
Yeah,
so.
could have gotten you in first and let you discuss it.
Well, I mean, you couldn't
Present
even
it.
answer the questions they were asking.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I wondered, if the other side of this had been made public. Because all we heard was the negatives, and you had all this stuff
It's
writing
all,
that we read.
Well, there was a lot of people that were that were not informed. I saw that. I mean, there's a lot of questions asked that have been public knowledge for months.
And that's why Tom could have given them, we
Yeah.
should have had Tom give the information first and then go with the
Yeah.
I
question.
think for future meetings, we should have Tom go through what he has to say first, and then public comment can kind of react to you. Because I think that would have addressed a lot of their concerns to begin with.
Yeah,
they might still disagree. This group likely would have disagreed with what I had to say.
Right.
But I think you would have known a little bit more about what the objections with the fire hall, the advantages of the new site. We didn't even get to discuss the Backage Road at all.
Right.
So those folks think that everything, all the traffic is going to continue to come down, even though all these documents that I provided you are online. You know, they're on.
Most of them probably didn't do their research to
I
go
would
and look at it.
guarantee most people don't.
Yeah, that's very important, you know, all they see is their side of it so
Right.
far.
right.
Well, if your interest is controlling the traffic on Lower Roy Lake Road, all this other stuff is moot. It doesn't matter. You don't care where we place the recycling, whether it stays where it is.
And, you know, this is just a typical not in my backyard, you know, and then people show up for that.
So I just, Mark, I think for future meetings, we should just have Tom be able to explain why we're here discussing any particular item first.
Right.
And go with public comment after that.
We can do that on this agenda list here too. We can just have, go over that first. I mean, I could remember as well, but we start off with open forum. So we need to have it that you can speak first. I'll say open forum first. Go ahead, Tom, and then from there.
Right.
An explanation of the topic first.
Right.
Right. I think that would be okay. I think either work, you know, if they go first, that's fine. But when we start to discuss it, I think the comments have to stop. until
Oh,
we're
yeah.
done. And then if you want another round.
Especially
of
once it
questions
got
or comments,
personal.
Yeah,
You know,
Mhm.
that was counterproductive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might suggest that, that Tom still maybe ask the fire chief for a letter, so that you have time to read it.
Sure.
So that you're not spending time
Digesting that.
speed on conversation with it. And then,
I think that's a great idea, because that would give all of us a chance to kind of put our heads together, well, independently, but we'd be able to think about what different options might be available here versus the other site that we're proposing before he comes in. And if 5 of us are thinking about it, we're probably going to come up with 5 different ideas, and we can bounce them off of him
Mhm.
when he's here.
and I think any one of you can talk to them in person. too.
Sure.
If you have specific questions and you want a detailed answer, I'm sure Sean would be happy to.
So what you're saying is like his suggestion to take what was gonna be proposed out by the treatment plant and put it in the 1.5 acres, have that on, so he could see that option and see what he thinks about that.
I don't know personally if we're gonna need something as expansive as the new site is proposing. And my reason behind that is that if we start charging, anytime you charge for anything, you get less of it. You get less participation. I don't think that there's really ever an exception to that rule. And so if we start charging out of towners to recycle, you're gonna have less of them recycling.
One, I think it's a recycling.
That might be
part,
all right.
It's the garbage part, right?
We already charge for garbage.
Right now, we just charge per bag, but recycling is free.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, other than what you pay, you know, there is a county fee on your taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, either way, when we start charging for either recycling or garbage, you're gonna get less of it. And so we might not need this expansive deal if we have less activity, period, which might fit in. We might not even need that whole 1.2 acres. We might just need to back it up another 20 feet and put in another and double the amount of dumpsters that we have.
Well, I know,
That
but
might be
the
sufficient.
biggest part is trying to get it off of this parking lot.
Agreed.
So backing it up 20 feet, I don't think it'd do it. If we had our own access here where it was back in here and you had to go back out this way and there was nothing in this parking lot, I think that would
Sure.
appease the fire chief a lot more than anything.
Right.
But also that we'd have to have the same system as you were thinking out at the out at the sand pits area, because you would have to have people buy a permit, you know, to get in there.
Mhm.
You know, they'd
And
have to
with
go
that,
and get a temporary permit.
You
Right,
could,
the
you
dump.
could put a gate right there too.
But if you, and once you start putting gates like that, then it's completely controlled. It's not open in the front. It's controlled all around.
And if you were concerned about people dropping bags off and leaving them at the gate, I don't know how big of an issue that is or not. It's not something that I know much about, but you could easily implement a security camera system that would only be activated when something triggered it and would record those license plates that we could then look at, or it could even trigger a screen to go off in here that would alert somebody in City Hall that would say somebody's over at recycling doing X, Y, and Z, and they could kind of keep an eye on it. I think there are other alternatives other than, you know, what we've thought about tonight.
Another thing that bothers me is that if we increase the capacity of this site we have now, 2 years from now, it could be shut down for various reasons.
Right.
And so in the meantime, we lose whatever trees and so forth. They're gone. And I think what we have there now is a real asset around that park, having those trees and that extra land. Once you use it, they're gone. And that could very easily happen because we could get shut down 2 years from now for various reasons.
I agree with you, Dill, and that's why I'm opposed to going to this new site, because if we build up this new site, spend $250,000 and we shut it down in 2 years, you imagine the amount of people that are gonna be in here mad at us then?
That's true. On the other hand, we already own the site. You know, as far as. it's
Right, but we
city
haven't
land,
developed it.
And I don't agree with all these people that complain about all this stuff that live in that area. I mean, that plant has been there for 30 years.
Mhm.
They know that that's there. That's city property. We have our maintenance shed there and all that sort of thing. They have no complaint in that respect.
Right.
You know, he said, well, I built my $500,000 house there and I want it quiet. Well,
I'm just concerned with the upfront costs, not knowing
No,
if
that's
we're
a
gonna
good
be
point.
shutting it down
that's a good.
or changing something. I think it's a lot cheaper to modify this a little bit, see what happens in 2 years, and if we need to expand it further out, like he's saying, to put in a different driveway and whatnot, then we look at that point. But I think just knocking it 20 or 30 feet back is
But I don't think there's any
cheaper.
way you can expand this site without cutting down trees.
Agreed. I think I completely agree. But if you look at the overlay of the trees, the thinnest area of those trees is directly behind that. So, I mean, you could go back to wherever the thickest point is and say, we're gonna expand it back this far and no further right now. Just different
Well, that's true.
spitballing
I mean,
options,
this could all fit in right here.
right? Which is not, it only has a couple of trees in that area.
That's true. It just depends how it's laid out. It could
Right.
be laid out differently or.
I think it'd
I'm
be,
kind of surprised we haven't heard from people that live in the area now.
I'm
They
not.
don't want it.
I'm not there.
I was wondering that too.
Yeah.
I expected with all the emails that we were seeing from people come in, that somebody that lives in this area would have said, we want to see it go away.
Yeah.
It's an eyesore, you know, whatever the case is, it's bringing a lot of traffic.
Well, they don't
That's
see
why I
the
wonder-
traffic.
That's why I wonder if they really even know that what's going on.
Well, all that comes in through the firehouse. I think the people that live back there, they don't see that.
Could be.
You know, if you stand at those dumpsters, in the wintertime, you can see it, vaguely see a couple houses, but in the summertime, you can't tell if there's a house back there or not.
But if I lived there, I wouldn't want that garbage in the
Right.
dumpster.
But I mean, I think we could do it judiciously where it would have the minimal effect on people that live in that area. I don't think we need to make it a huge site. I just don't. I think we can minimally expand it.
Well, it looks like there's work to do then.
You know, and the third option is still the county site. Costs us nothing.
Yeah.
We eliminate this one altogether. And then that solves all the problems. The police chief, the
That's an option.
police chief, or excuse me, the fire chief is satisfied, the parks director is satisfied, these folks are satisfied.
I was really close to suggesting that.
And that's
It's
the
a
option
viable
that most of the other
solution
towns
and
have
it's
used
what the
done.
county prefers.
Yeah.
Lake Shore has overrecycling, don't they? No, at City Hall.
They have some dumpsters there.
Yeah, they recycle though.
Who does?
Lake Shore.
Lakeshore.
I don't know.
Well,
One,
I go there twice.
one more thing I should point out too, Eric brought this up to me yesterday. the hauler.
Yeah.
Is how much, so there's a percentage of people who don't have recycling now who could get it at curbside.
Sure. And they choose not to.
And I think he said there was like 25% of the community couldn't because they're on a small road or something that it's not feasible to drive a truck down there. But the majority of folks in town could have curbside recycling. Now, that doesn't do anything for transients and,
Right.
they would have to go out to the county site. But, that is a viable option to consider.
Well, Pequot is not bending over backwards to accommodate the people in Walker and Bemidji and everywhere else.
But there again, we did have a handful of people at a city council meeting who said they wanted to continue the recycling site here. So
And you heard that tonight too. from them.
you can have it, there's some pretty strong opinions, and no matter where we put it, no matter what we do with it, there's always gonna be a
There's
group who
always going to
doesn't
be
like it.
disagreement. Yeah. Yep.
But I think shutting it down altogether, there would be very few. I mean, because they would have two options.
That's the thing. It's not like we're taking recycling away. It's just saying, do it at your curbside.
It's far less convenient. Well, what does $35,000 cost on your tax levy too? I mean, you could say it that way. Why are we even providing it at all?
What was that cost again for Nisswa for a year?
$70,000 is the total.
70,000.
We pay half.
Yeah, but we
But
could end up.
We
with-
could pay 70.
So
That's a big chunk of
that's
money.
just through 2022, right?
Correct.
And that's going to go up with inflation and with fuel prices.
Well, that and the number of dumpsters he pulls,
Right.
his price he's been pretty good at holding it steady, but there's a limit to it, I'm sure. So,
That's a lot of money.
It is.
but there's a lot of trucks. I mean, you ought to see how many times he has to bring a truck over here.
Well, I'm sure.
And then the amount of cleanup that his guys do too. People are pigs. They dump stuff that they're not supposed to. They throw mattresses into, mattress cannot go into the regular trash. The styrofoam that they place into the cardboard. Our businesses are technically not supposed to use recycling. It's for residential.
Mhm.
But they're the worst, some of them are the worst abusers. They'll bring truckloads of material up to the recycling center.
I've seen that.
So,
Small contractors are also.
yes, they are.
Do a lot of that.
Mhm.
Well, one person was asking, where are these people coming from? Go look in the dumpster. You're going to see their address right on the box.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say. and
You'll know
I-
where they're coming
I
from.
use this quite a bit,
Mhm.
maybe a couple times a week, and I have never seen one person that I recognize from this town at that recycling center.
There are
I've got to
some,
think that it's a lot of people from out of town.
there are. I just don't have quantities. I couldn't tell you it's 10 cars or
There's
1,000.
no way to
I
quantify
just
that.
never see any local people.
Mhm.
I've been here 20 years. I know a lot of local people.
It's too handy, it's only a block off the highway,
And that was
So
part
the-
of their argument that then everybody goes to the city after that and spends their money.
So was that 45%, that figure that came up?
Yeah, what was that?
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, 45, that's
of the-
true.
That's of sites
Going
like
down.
that. That doesn't include the curbside. So
Okay.
when you throw in the curbside, then it's nowhere near that.
Yeah.
Well, that's with the curbside.
So when you look at the county's landfill site and you look at us and then the third site that they currently have, we represent 45% of that volume.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of misleading then, that 45%, because that includes all the curbside in town here too.
No, it does not.
It does not.
No,
When
it's
you look at
just the site.
curbside, Brainerd and Baxter would far exceed anything we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You'd think just for the environmental impact of driving and fuel that the county would want a site here.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna have all these people that 45% of the people don't drive, that's what, 25 miles from here.
Well, that, I think that, the south, east corner of Crow Wing County would be the central location for a town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
The county board seems to have the impression that Nisswa people think they're special.
They do.
Yeah.
And they
That's
said
their-
that, they
that's their
flat out
attitude.
said that at the meeting that we went to when we were trying to get them to provide some of the funding to build our site. They just dismissed it out of hand. 'Cause-
Yeah. See that?
So they look at it simply as this, the cost of building a site, they're already building a $2 million site. So, our $500,000 site seems like a bargain compared to that. And then Their cost of operation. They think they're gonna narrow it down to operating a site.
Well, it is, I don't know if anybody.
It's no loss for them.
Small
No,
trailer load of
for them, it's
stuff
perfect.
that recycler to dump. It is expensive,
Yeah.
very, very expensive to
Yeah.
bring things out there.
They give you a $10 deal
Oh,
every
yeah,
year
that's
though, right?
great.
It costs you $10 in gas to go out there.
Yeah.
What are they gonna spend, Tom, on that big addition out there? This county, 2 million.
They're putting in new buildings and they're making it so it's drive-through. It's supposed to be pretty convenient. So once you're there, it's convenient. I'm not saying it's cheap. I'm not saying that it's, convenient to drive out there. But once you're there, it's supposed to be a one-stop shop. Everything from your oil to refrigerators, everything. You drive through the building and you unload it as it comes, off the back of the truck and order.
I would be very surprised if the county is willing to continue kicking in money, because there's no benefit to them for us having us our
I have to
own,
close it down.
us having our own facility.
We did a lot of talking to get them to keep going with us.
Yeah. I think that's a limited time.
You just gotta.
I think that's a limited time offer.
Okay, now I think we've discussed this a lot. So if anybody,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.